Hello, I'm Odin, and today I'm going to make a prop from Yu-Gi-Oh! I've actually been getting Yu-Gi-Oh! Requests ever since I was on DIY Prop Shop. I'm going to make the Millennium Puzzle from Yu-Gi-Oh! I've already made my own pattern of the puzzle, looking at pictures from the animated show. Like with a lot of cartoons, the Millennium Puzzle seems to have variations, even scene to scene within the same episode. That's a standard problem with cartoons, right? Things are drawn economically, whatever. I don't want to get into that. But the idea is the details specifically seem to change depending on which scene you're looking at. So what I've tried to do is make myself a pattern based off of some of the ideal pieces. This is primarily using stuff that I've seen from some of the scenes I've looked up on YouTube, as well as a little bit of details taken from some 3D models in the Bandai kit. It's not canon. This, I'm sure, isn't the official absolute right Millennium, but this is the one I'm gonna make, and I've got this pattern in the description if you want to make one too. Now I'm gonna cut up my foam parts. The pattern for this build is all straight line cuts, and I plan to use a ruler to help keep my cutting as accurate as I can. When the prop is finished, we would be able to see if any of the seams were slightly warped or curved. And it's nice seeing all the pattern pieces laid out on the table. Oh, I forgot some detail I never finished. I just realized I forgot to add a couple little details to finish the pattern. I didn't see it until I was just now cutting it out. There's these 3 panel lines. There's 4 channels that come down from the top. They're supposed to meet up on the front of the Millennium Puzzle, just above the Eye of Horus. I'm missing 3 of my lines. I'm gonna stop and add those in, and then I'll continue. Just a second. Since I drew my pattern on Inkscape, it's easy for me to make edits and changes. It's easy because the pattern is all straight lines. I can copy and paste the position of X or Y from one node to the next, moving the nodes and then making new connecting lines. It took just a couple of minutes, but I have my pattern updated, and I print out new patterns to work from. I cut out just the new piece. Incorrect. Correct. Now all the panel lines connect as they wrap around the puzzle. So all the lines that I have on the pattern here are what I want to make as channel lines, as panel lines. My intent is to cut out these 5 pieces from one sheet of foam, right? That's 4mm, something that's gonna have some thickness to it. Then each individual panel, this little box is a panel, this little box is a panel, etc. I want to cut out of 2mm foam or 4 or 6, depending on how much relief I want to have. But I will need to know where they go. I mean, I could guess, but I have a pattern. I cut out some of the small spaces between the panels, making a kind of stencil out of the paper patterns. This is what I intend on doing to all of my pattern pieces. I'm gonna cut out the base pieces out of some 4mm What the Foam. What the Foam is flat packed, so all the pieces won't curl as most foams do because they're sold on a roll. I traced not just the outside of each pattern, but the panel line cutouts as well. And I'm careful to not move the paper as I trace it. I could get it back in place, but it's easier if I don't move it at all. And when I cut it out, I leave lots of extra foam around the true cut line. I want to trim the piece after I get the next layer glued on. 1 of 5. This isn't so bad so far. Actually, that looks really cool. I like that. The other 4 triangle pieces are all cut the same way, and they're traced, including the inner panel line guides. All right, these are the base pieces. Now I need to cut out all the panels, and I'm gonna do that with What the Foam as well, because they're flat packed. How do I wanna do this? Is there a slick way of doing this? I don't think there's a slick way to do it. Is there? Maybe there is. I decide to cut out the corners of the inner panel lines, just like I did around the outside. And once it's traced, I have a sort of connect the dots guide that I can follow to cut out all the little panels. Now for the most part, I use a ruler to help me cut straight lines to connect those dots, and I pay attention to the corners because I don't want to overcut any of the corners. You'll be able to see that cut in the finished prop. Those are the 2mm panels I want to use for the top. The center square, I actually want to cut out a 6mm because I want it to stick up a little bit. Some of the drawings I've seen, it's got more of relief than others. Sometimes it's totally flat. I like that extra bit of dimension, so I'm gonna be doing that. The nice thing is, this panel is small enough that I can cut it from some scrap. Now I get to do this exact same thing to all the side panels. I think I'll do that with a time lapse. Using a montage or time lapse in a video is great because a lot of stuff can get done very quickly. But I don't have any new instructions here. Just continue to cut the rest of the panels out, don't overcut the corners, keep the lines straight, and that front center panel, that was the trickiest to make. The sawtooth sides were fun to draw and to cut out. And when the puzzle is finished, it's gonna end up behind the eye. Oh good, looks like we're done. Kind of exciting, kind of fun. Give me the simplest one first, which is this one. I'm gonna work with one side at a time. I'm using contact cement to glue the small panels to each of the sides of the pyramid. But contact cement takes time to dry. It has to dry first, you see, then it'll stick together. What I need to do is move these pieces out of the way so they can dry while I apply glue to the next set. So for the other sides, I lay out all the parts on paper plates just to keep them together. Now when I do stick them together, I line up the outside edges, and the panel lines themselves are about 2 millimeters wide. I didn't draw them like that on purpose. I drew the puzzle actually smaller than it is right now, and then I printed it out larger. It just felt to me like it needed to be bigger. And that front panel is still the one that stands out. The jagged sides are really hard to put in place. Mine ended up being just a little off center, but it's gonna be fine. And with the top, since I didn't use the center square, I can set the 2 millimeter version right back where it belongs, and all the corners will be in the right place. I don't have any glue on this center panel. I can easily remove it and then glue in the 6 millimeter version that I want to have. I've got the 5 panels glued together and yep, getting exactly what I want. What I need to do now is actually cut them all. This is why I was saving cutting the edges, is because now that all the top panels are on and they're glued on by hand, right, so they're all a little incorrect, there's little inconsistencies. But if I cut them now, it isn't gonna matter because they'll all line up with however straight my cut is. What I need to do is cut everything on an angle. In a specific angle. The 4 edges, right? The 4 edges that make up the corners of the pyramid coming together, those are all going to need to be 45 degrees because I need to make, you know, it makes a box. 45 degrees, it's still going to be 45 degrees even though it's pointed down to the bottom. And if I'm wrong, I'll find out, but I'm pretty sure that's still going to be correct. Now the top, because it's a triangle, isn't 45 degrees. These 3 are going to need to be 30 degrees each, so it makes a 60-degree angle, and that way all the points will come down together. And I'm pretty sure the sides don't need to be 60 degrees as well because it's a 4-sided box. That's why I'm fairly confident. How do I cut these accurately? Well, I've got 2 options. I can set the table with my bandsaw and I can cut them that way. Pretty easily, actually. I can set the table at 45 degrees and make the 2 cuts and set it at 30 degrees and make these other cuts. But I actually got a new tool. CosTools has a brand new tool that they sent to me that has a selectable angle cutter. So this is kind of exciting to me because by adjusting the thing on the side, I can change the angle of this cutter from anywhere from a 20-degree angle up to a 60 or 90-degree angle. Having this be easily consistent, or hopefully easy, is definitely got me excited. So what I want to do, here, get that set. Now is there a way, because I'm doing this, and then I'm going to want to cut, because the blade cuts this way, so I want to cut like that. Do they have it set up to where it'll be easy? It's my first time using this tool, so let's see. Easy to use it with a ruler, and that's what I was thinking. Where do I place the straight edge of a ruler for the blade to cut on the line? I draw a line on a test piece and make a cut. And what I find is that with a 30-degree angle, if I place the ruler about 1 millimeter off the line, I hit the mark that I want. Now this measurement won't be universal. Each angle change will have a different amount of offset for the ruler. But this tool works really well. Yeah. This is cool. I think this particular tool is doing fantastic for my literal first time using it, first project I've used it on. And I'm getting far cleaner, sharper cuts than I would get on my bandsaw. So yeah, I like this. That slipped. There it goes. So did that cause a problem? There's a little nick on the side. That's okay. So this last cut, I let it ride up a little bit and the edge started to come over the ruler, which changed the direction the razor blade was going. So I got the smallest little nick in the side. I'm gonna let it go, but something I need to pay attention to in the future. Just real quick, CosTools also sent me 2 other new tools to play with. One of them is a border marker for measured marking around irregular shapes. It works really well. I try adjusting it to be a little longer, and it still works just like I would expect it to. I get 2 parallel lines that follow that funky edge. The other tool is a strip cutter. It has 2 blades that you can adjust to be different widths apart. Now, when I first looked at it, I was only thinking about cutting straight lines, but I think this is what it was designed for. Getting a specific shape cut to be, this would be a great way to do trim pieces on armor. You've got your pattern, you know what you want, but you want this, you know, however wide. I set it for 1 inch. Hopefully these are available in metric outside of the US. Got it set for 1 inch. And what an easy way to make trim pieces or something. It's the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, these are cool. So yeah, CosTools, thank you for the new tools. Thank you for the new ideas. These are cool. All right, let's get back to the build. I think I'm done playing with my new toys. I check how well the mitered cuts fit together, and I'm ready to glue them. I coat all the edges with contact cement. It'll take a few minutes for them all to dry, so I may as well cover them all now. So a smart person would make marks on the back sides so you know which piece needs to go with which piece, right? That's what a smart person would do. Instead, I was just trying to read where my panel lines were and make sure the panel lines all fit together. So that's what I was doing. But you know, someone who would plan ahead would make marks so they would know. I set the panels flat on the table, bring the edges together, and then fold the parts together. And I find that doing it this way, I get more accurate corners the first time, because contact cement is not known for second chances. But I noticed the corners are not fitting like I expected, like I wanted. Then I thought about probably why that happened. Because it's on an angle. I legit thought that the corners here were gonna be 45. But I've got a good gap on the inside of all of mine. They're not 45. Everything's gonna be 30 because it's a frickin' triangle, Odin. That's what I get for overthinking it. So my options are start over, not gonna happen. Or let's do something really quick and try and fix it. Fix it. I remove 1 millimeter or so off 2 sides from the top. It just helped it to set in place better. And I'm sure my problem has 2 factors. My guess is that a 45-degree angle might be off. And then there's the surefire fact that this is hand cut and not machined edges. Thankfully, all the gaps are on the inside, so the outer corners all still meet and look good. It's Ra's starship from Stargate. All right. The last panel detail I need to add are the corner pieces that go around the square top. I cut my set from some 1 millimeter craft foam that's left over from my Minecraft build. And as I had learned then, it's easier to glue this lightweight foam by sticking it to blue tape first. And then the piece won't move around or stick to the paintbrush as you apply contact cement. Now I suppose you could just super glue them on as well, but I use contact cement. Good. Those are the panel lines I forgot to put on before I made all the cuts, but honestly, those would have been interesting to do with, well, no, it was here, the ruler would have been on them, it probably would have been fine, but that's okay. Now I've got all the parts on there. I need to do the all-seeing eye, the Eye of Horus, I think is what that's supposed to be. That goes here, and then of course the loop that goes in the top, so Yugi can hang this delicate little pendant around his neck. So let's get those cut out. I took a new front face template and I cut the center of the eye out, just the center circle. And then I lay that pattern over the prop and trace the circle onto the foam. All right, got my target of where the center of the eye needs to go. That's the Illuminati. I've got just a little bit left of this 1/4 inch or 5 or 6 millimeter thick. Yeah, it's like 5 millimeter thick foam dowel. So this size is not as easy to find. I think you can still get this size at some of the craft stores, but specifically I ordered this one from TNT Cosplay because I know that this smaller is not as simple to find, and it's pretty much exactly what I want. To make the center iris of the eye, I set the handle of a hobby knife into one of my 1-2-3 blocks and then wrap the foam dowel around it. A drop of super glue will keep the circle shut. The only trick here is to not glue the foam to the knife. And I make the spiral that goes under the eye the same way. It's a drop of super glue. But this time I did glue it to the green cutting mat. All the other pieces are cut to fit the pattern, and I could just leave the cut ends square. But I decided to go ahead and round the ends off with a grinding stone with my rotary tool. I have a silver dot target to place the eye correctly, just keep it level, and the lower details are glued on as well. To make the loop that's on top of the puzzle, I have a bit of 10mm HD foam dowel. Now this one I super glue together around a 1-inch wooden dowel. I keep it on the wood as I cut most of the bottom off because I want it to remain round, and then I super glue the loop to the top of the puzzle, and then I remove the wooden dowel. I can still see some of the contact cement that's on the surface, and that could be visible once the puzzle is shiny and gold. This is one of the main solvents in contact cement. By wetting a paper towel, I can pretty much wipe off the dried contact cement. Now this is a really nasty chemical, so good ventilation, gloves, and a vapor respirator are necessary when pouring it onto paper towels like this. In just a couple of minutes, all the excess surface contact cement is removed from the puzzle. Okay, now that I've got it all cleaned up, now that I've got all the details put on it, what I want to do is I'm going to spray it down with black Plastidip. Now, one of the things I know I'm going to need to do is, I was wiping it down with naphtha there. Naphtha? How do you pronounce that? The whole point was to remove the excess contact cement that was on the surface. That way it's as clean as can be when I'm spraying the Plastidip on it. You can actually, I don't always clean that off, but I can see the slight texture change. There's a slight, ever so slight bit of a change there under the Plastidip where the contact cement residue is still on the surface of the foam. Because I want to make this shiny and gold, I don't want that at all. And because I want to make this shiny and gold, I'm going to spray a couple of coats of Plastidip, and then I'll take the same chemical and I'll wipe it down. And what that's going to do is it's going to smooth out the surface a lot. It's going to, actually if I did it a lot, I could remove most of the Plastidip, which I don't want to do. All I want to do is kind of wet sand is what's going to happen. And the biggest benefit of doing that, if you've sprayed Plastidip onto foam, you know how you get those little tiny pores? There's those little tiny dots that end up being on the surface, and you just think, I'll put another coat on, it'll go away, and they just get bigger. This wiping it down with naphtha or xylene seems to eliminate those. On the black katana blade that I did for the Demon Slayer build, I ended up doing that a few times between the coats, and it made a huge difference. That blade was one of the smoothest Plastidip blades that I've had. So I want to do that to this. So I'm going to spray this probably 4 or 5 times, and for the last 3, I'm going to wipe it down each time, and then I get this glossy look when it dries. It's not enamel glossy smooth, right? It's not crazy mirror perfect, but for foam and for Plastidip, I'm really happy with this. So now I want to just paint the whole thing with gold Rub and Buff paint. Rub and Buff is not quite paint, it's more of a waxy compound. And a little bit goes a really long way. You don't need very much at all. It really spreads out and covers very well. Now I know this tube looks small, but because of how little you need to use when covering something, it is possible that the remainder in the tube will dry out long before I get a chance to use it up. It's funny to me that for a compound such as this, honestly, the best way to apply it is finger painting. Paintbrushes work, Q-tips work, putting it onto a small bit of cloth also works, and that works really well for weathering, but for just applying it, I prefer using my fingers, and I prefer wearing a glove because I don't like cleaning my hands off. But you know, mineral spirits I think takes it right off, so it's not that big of a deal to get it off of your fingers. But yeah, pardon me as I finger paint. Because the eye is dimensional, I get really good shading just because I can't reach into all the corners. But I do decide to go ahead and use a paintbrush to help get closer to the eye and to fill in around the edge of the thicker top panel. Rub and Buff dries very quickly, and you can then rub it and buff it to a shine. So I really tried. One of the things I really wanted to have happen was to keep all the channels clear. Keep them all, well, black. Wanted to keep them clear of Rub and Buff. I wanted to make sure that they all stayed. It's one of the reasons why I went ahead and did 2 millimeters, made them a little deeper, right? To make sure that they would all be in equal depth, they'd all be really clean and sharp corners, and they would all stay black. I've got one, because of being right next to the eye, I got one where I've got a little bit of gold in the bottom of one of the channels. It's also a little bit whiter than all the others. So as I look over it, I've got just this little spot here, and I'm gonna wanna go ahead and get some black paint and correct. So it worked, my plan worked exactly the way I wanted it to, everywhere except right there next to the eye. With a tiny detail brush, I'm able to get some black acrylic paint to cover over the extra gold paint that I didn't want. The best part is it's already pretty much dry. The acrylic's gonna take a minute to dry, but the Rub and Buff, it's done pretty quickly. And it is a wax-based compound. So if it happens to tarnish or get a little bit dull, you should be able to take a cloth or paper towel and put a shine back onto it again. There's a list in the description for the materials that I used in this project. This was actually pretty enjoyable to build. I mean, it looks really simple, and I suppose in a way it is. It has some challenges, getting the corners cut right, getting the panels to line up the way I wanted it to. What's really fun for me was this has enough building similarities. It reminds me of the robots and the mechs that I like to build, like the Gundam suit. Believe it or not, building this reminds me of building the Gundam suit because of all the panel lines. So it was a bit familiar and a bit fun to do. Now, something you might have noticed is that I'm not really familiar with Yu-Gi-Oh! I know of the show, I know of the lore, and I know of the card game, but I've never actually watched the show and never actually played the card game. Nothing against it. It's not like I dislike Yu-Gi-Oh! I just kind of missed it. It just kind of missed me. We didn't connect, that's all. So if I happen to have said something wrong or got a name or a detail wrong, I apologize. I just didn't know any better. Now, for those of you who remember, I was on another channel previous to starting my own called DIY Prop Shop. And my good friend Vinny actually built the Millennium Puzzle on DIY Prop Shop. I remember watching that video when it came out, and I don't think I've really watched it since. So if I've happened to build this the same way that Vinny built his on DIY Prop Shop, then that was just the obvious way for both of us to do it. So if you do want to see a different take on how to put this together, if you want to get a different idea and a different approach for how to make it, please check out the DIY Prop Shop, check out Vinny's video. That was a lot of fun to be part of that channel, and I'm really glad it's part of my past, part of my beginnings of being here on YouTube. But I do know that there's going to be lots of different ways that you can make the Millennium Puzzle from Yu-Gi-Oh! But this is how Odin makes. Now, one of the other fun challenges with shooting a reflective gold prop that has the wide stuff on the top, yeah, everything's in shadow. Can you tell? In order to get the close-up shots, the beauty shots you saw earlier, I actually ended up taking my paper script and putting it underneath it just to bounce light up onto it so you could see it with the close-up cameras. And then set some other things around it, but you can see, it makes a bit of a difference, right? The more you know. I want to thank Silver Scion, Emeralds, Stephen Deitch, and all of my Patreon supporters. Patreon members at the $5 and above level get access to my private Discord, which includes weekly games with me, prop-related chat, and early access to live streams. My Patreon support is the #1 thing that makes this show possible. If you like the video, don't forget to subscribe. Have an idea for something for me to make? Please leave a comment below. And if you make any of these projects, you can send me a picture.